So for this week, we're discussing the different Spider-Man films. He's one of my favorite superheroes. He's definitely Marvel's, to say the least, flagship superhero. Um, one of their longest lasting runs. So we're just going to run through, take it one step at a time. So we're going to look at Peter, Spidey, the villains, the origin stories, the sciencey stuff that goes along with Spider-Man. So we'll start off with Toby. What do you guys think of him as Peter Parker?
I think Toby was the Spider-Man we needed to kick it all off, to kind of garnish that interest, especially if you look like the age demographic that they were going for, relevance and how much money they needed to get to pay villains to be in the movies. Basically, he was the perfect choice. I think the first movie was phenomenal. It's got its drawbacks, and after you watch MCU movies now, it totally makes it look bad. But I think there's something endearing about it that made me rewatch it 100 times a year that it came out on VHS. Yes, I had it on VHS. I just phenomenal. I had to show everybody it. I had my Spider-Man wallet, but I had always been a Spider-Man fan. I think that it was perfect at the time, but when you see where it went to, like up through the third one, which I just can't even count as a movie, and what they were able to do with the character, even Andrew Garfield's were they able to stretch that a little bit, but now what we have, I think he was what we needed at the time, but I don't know that he's
Agreed.
kind of anything to hold up as phenomenal or great.
As a Peter, I'd give him a 7 out of 10. He wasn't. Peter really killed it for me. I was going to give him an 8, but Gary, when you mentioned emo Peter, it brought it down to a 7, in all honesty.
Well, not Toby's fault. That was the direction he was given. I don't want to blame him for that.
You know, with that, it's almost like they were building to something bigger. They just didn't know what. And at that time, I mean, Marvel had, after that bankruptcy, their rights were all over the place. So it even made Spider-Man's world kind of difficult.
I think that's why a fourth didn't happen. For one, I saw the first one 4 times in the theater. It's the first movie I ever saw 4 times in the theater. And it really made Spider-Man larger than life. It looked a little stiff sometimes, but for the time, it was phenomenal. I thought the quippy side of Spider-Man was a little weak in those movies.
Yeah.
The angsty side of Peter Parker was the strongest element. I know a lot of people didn't like Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. I didn't have a problem with her. I thought the problems I had with Mary Jane wasn't her acting. It was what they didn't do with the character in writing.
Well, I mean, it came out at the time of Dawson's Creek, and so they had to fit a narrative and an audience. And though I hated it, I don't know if they would have gotten as much attention as they did because there's so many non-comic book people that saw it as a result. So
and the writing was good for the time, but when you're a comics fan and you see those aspects of the characters missing, it jumps out to you.
It's very glaring.
Right. I mean, most of the audience watching it, probably 90%, because we're the 1%ers that are noticing this stuff, wouldn't know the difference. But but I thought the first 2 were good. 2 was great. 3 had its highlights. I thought Christian Hayden Church, whatever. Thomas Hayden Church. Thought he was a great Sandman. His was good. I thought the problem with the film was what Sam Raimi said. At the time, Sony was meddling with it, trying to force him to do things he didn't want to do. And that ended up with a muddled script and muddled performances and uneven film. Yeah,
and so, I mean, the thing that killed Tobey's Spider-Man for me is he just wasn't wisecracking enough. There wasn't that
exactly, I agree.
feeling of him being more confident as Spider-Man. He definitely was a different person when he was Spider-Man compared to when he was Peter. But I feel like Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland really nailed that. When I have this mask on, I'm Spider-Man. I'm not Peter Parker.
Exactly, and I agree with that. They had the persona, because when that mask goes on, he's a different person.
Yep.
All of a sudden he's got all this confidence he doesn't have as Peter Parker. And I thought Andrew Garfield nailed that. So did Tom Holland. Andrew was a little too jockey of a Peter Parker, although that was his direction. His acting was fine, and him and Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in those movies had incredible chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same with MJ in the new film and Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Great chemistry.
They have phenomenal chemistry.
Oh, Zendaya is perfect in that role. She
Yeah.
adds a lot to that movie. Like, I'd never seen her before that. I'm like, oh, well, let's check it out, see who she is. Thought she nailed it.
So
Yeah,
I had
for
only
sure.
seen her in Casey Undercover, which my daughter was obsessed with, and she watched every episode about 60 times. And so that's all I knew of her. And I was like, oh, this is going to be rough. And then she totally surprised me. I think it very well, and they wrote it to her acting style, too. So it's not just written as a character. They definitely wrote it to play on her acting style, which is nice.
Yeah.
What I wanted when the Andrew Garfield movies came out was not a whole reboot. I wanted a continuation of the previous movies. So, okay, you got a different actor. Cool. Let's just pick up where you left off.
Right.
So Sony
Continue
still owned
the
it. They had
story.
the rights. That would have been phenomenal. And then we could actually, what you mentioned earlier with older Peter Parker, could have easily had that. And they probably would have had something really classic. My daughter's stealing food. They would have had something just absolutely phenomenal. But to redo it so soon and to do it with, I think they tried to go hard with the CGI and not the story necessarily, but the CGI also sucked. So
That goes back to the whole Sony deal, being that they had to come out with one every 5 years or something like that, or they lost the rights.
yeah.
And I mean, they paid pennies of what Spider-Man was actually worth. And then once they built Tobey Maguire's character, and then they went, and I think there was supposed to be a Spider-Man 4, but
It was.
the script just couldn't get off the ground, and they were running out of time, and Avengers was just about to come out. I think that Spider-Man 4 was supposed to be slated for like 2011. So, I mean, that was already the MCU.
The thing is, too, is even around that time, because we, all of us nerds have been talking about Sinister Six for I don't know how many years, but around that time that started swirling, like it was a possibility. Raimi even hinted at it numerous times.
Yeah.
He was so fed up. I watched an interview with him. He was so fed up after the third one, after what Sony did, that he just washed his hands of it. So we could have actually seen something pretty special.
And that's where they went off the rails in the Andrew Garfield one. The first one I thought was good. You know, I thought the Stacys were a great family element. I thought they were all great. Dennis Leary was a great Captain Stacy.
Oh, yeah.
And the Lizard I thought was done really well in that movie.
For
Probably
sure.
one of the best Stan Lee cameos ever in that little scene. And the action was phenomenal. So I thought the first one was really solid. It starts falling apart in the second one when they're trying to, not the core story between Peter and Gwen was still really strong in the second one, I thought.
Yeah.
They tried to wedge too much in with trying to build the Sinister Six in one movie. That's where it went off the rails.
Because, I mean, I've got Peter in Amazing Spider-Man just because he really portrayed a new kind of Peter. And he was that hipster Peter who was confident in his own mind, but still very insecure outside of himself, where he couldn't ask out the girl. And then Uncle Ben, I love the scene where he goes, he has you on his computer. And I mean, that was just phenomenal. It was all around an Amazing Spider-Man 1. And like you said, I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 just kind of fell off the rails because they were trying to introduce Sinister Six very quickly, and they didn't give themselves enough time. The origin story of Amazing Spider-Man, I thought, was the best origin story out of all three of them, because it really got into his parents, it really got into Uncle Ben, it really got into everything around this. Why is Spider-Man even a thing? How is it possible?
Right.
So I think with the Amazing Spider-Man, they actually knew the comics. And when I was watching the first trilogy, there are a lot of times you're like, wow, you really don't understand the comics that this is all coming from. And that was a big thing to me, but that's me. So I think for the people they're trying to actually appeal to get them into the seats, then that doesn't matter.
I love the Bruce Campbell cameos, though. Yeah, you can never have enough Bruce Campbell. That guy.
Never. I just my favorite Spider-Man isn't even Peter; it's Miles. In the movies, I think Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie they've done yet.
For sure.
Yeah, no Spider-Woman.
You're right, and that was a travesty. But we're getting to the next one.
You're in the Spider-Verse, and you don't have Spider-Woman.
Not yet. We got to wait for the good stuff.
Again, you can only have so many in one.
Otherwise, you end up with Spider-Man 3, and we don't want that.
Exactly.
So if we're moving on, we'll go to the Tom Holland one next.
Yeah, Tom Holland. So
he's great. Like I said, Zendaya, and I thought she was great. And I can't remember the name of the guy who plays his friend right now. But what a great addition as a character.
Yeah.
It's hard for me with the Tom Holland ones because I feel like Happy Hogan actually carries those. And it's hands down the best character in the movies. And I know it wasn't intended to be that way, and it's kind of just supposed to be like shoddy or like, laughter. But there's a lot of moments where I kind of either bored in it or I'm just like, whatever. And then he pops in and I'm like, all right, cool, movie's good again. So,
see, I'm totally engaged with the Tom Holland Spider-Man, especially when he's interacting with Ned and MJ. So I don't know. I thought it's great, and I think and I've heard rumors that there's going to be a different reveal for her, that she's going to end up being a different character, and that they're hiding a last name on her or an alias. So I don't know if that's going to pan out, but we'll see.
It should be interesting because when they first dropped it, she was MJ.
Michelle Jones,
that's not Mary Jane. But I mean, again, you've got to develop these characters and evolve the settings they're in. You can't just have everything that was in the comics come straight through on the screen, or otherwise, what's the point of watching the movie?
Right.
And,
well, at my old age, I don't like to read as much, so I'll take the movies. No, I'm kidding.
And they did well. They threw you for a loop. They gave her the MJ initials, but they didn't make her Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Because they even said in the first one, her name's Michelle Jones. There might be another name on there that we don't know about.
Yep.
And I forgot what the rumor was, but it would be a pretty big reveal.
It would be interesting. We should definitely do a video on that.
And who didn't like the return of J. Jonah Jameson?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
For sure.
I mean, that was incredible.
I've got to be honest, I did not like the Far From Home movie that much at all. I found Mysterio to be, I think it was very poorly done, to be honest.
Wow.
Didn't like the storyline. Jake Gyllenhaal was fine. It wasn't him. It was more of the writing, the ending of it. There was a lot that I didn't appreciate about it. But if we're focusing just solely on Spidey, I think Tom Holland's fine. I think he's what the MCU needs. I think he plays the part that he's supposed to.
All right, so what do you think about the younger Aunt May then in those movies? I thought that worked fine.
I think Marissa Tomei is phenomenal in that role. I think it works.
If you look at her age, she's really not that much younger. Obviously, she's young and she looks younger. But when I think of
she's appropriately aged.
That 70, 80-year-old, I think of like a 50, 60-year-old aunt. Like, that's just where my mind goes, even though I know in the comics she's much older and she was always portrayed as this little old lady like in the original Spider-Man trilogy. But I really like the direction they went with her. And then the fact that you've got Happy, who's really helping him become a better person and a better superhero. You've got Tony, who is helping him out. The only thing that I don't like about the Tom Holland Spider-Man is the origin story. I don't get into it enough, but obviously we've already been into it in two other.
Right.
That's actually what I appreciated is that we didn't have to see Uncle Ben die again. And we didn't have to do all that stuff. Like, it's just, here's Spider-Man.
Right.
I'm like,
it's understood at this point. You don't need to rehash it.
Everyone knows Uncle Ben dies. It's not a spoiler anymore. It's just accepted as pop culture.
Listen, we all know with great power comes great responsibility. We know the tagline.
I may be one of the few people who's not a huge Iron Man fan of the movies either, just as a character. But I will say that the Spider-Man movies actually made me find Tony Stark to be a bit more endearing throughout the MCU. And I know that was the intention. I think they did that well. But there were a lot of movies where I just was annoyed when he was on the screen. So I will say they did that. I will say that it's also Spider-Man movies so far. I like that they blend the different runs of the comics over the years. Instead of just focusing on one, there's a lot pulled from the whole Spider-Man universe. I just think that's very well done.
I'm going to throw something wild out here. I would love to see, what if they just went full-on Marvel team-up movie and just did a trilogy pairing him with different heroes?
Yeah. I'd be all about it. He's got what, a 6-film deal? Let's do it.
I mean, you got this anchor in Spider-Man, and then you can bring in lesser heroes and introduce them in a Marvel team-up film.
I might have the perfect character.
And I feel like that's how they introduced Tom Holland Spider-Man in the first place, was bring in this character in a very supporting role, but at the same time not something that's overshadowing. And I feel like they nailed it with Spider-Man. DC tried to do the same thing with Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman kind of took the limelight at the end of Batman vs Superman.
Oh, she was the best thing in that movie, and she was in it for like
Exactly.
3 minutes.
She was the only good thing in that movie.
I do like Ben Affleck's Batman. I don't
He
like
did
the
a good job as
writing,
Batman.
but
He did
Ben
a lot.
Affleck is a great Batman.
He didn't get enough
I-
respect for that.
And that dude is big, like you would think Batman would be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
When
he's
you
an
think about
imposing Batman.
when you think about the team ups though, like Spider-Man, even in recent years, you have Spider-Man and Deadpool, and you have Spider-Man and Black Cat, 2 runs that were both phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
And there's so much you could even do with that. And if they're trying to figure out ways to bring Deadpool into the Marvel universe and actually make it toned down a little bit, which sucks to me, but I know what we gotta do with Disney.
Yeah, dude.
Spider-Man and Deadpool would be the perfect entry for that. It's a little team up action.
Yep.
That'd be great.
I'm curious if that Deadpool rumor is true, or the Deadpool 3 is Deadpool kills the Fox universe.
I would absolutely love that. I'd be all about that.
It'd be
So he goes
amazing.
and kills everyone that's in the old Fox catalog.
Do it. And please take every X-Men with you from those movies.
But then all those actors get to come back one more time too, and just have great guest scenes with Deadpool.
Yeah.
Well, we get Hugh Jackman back, so I'm all about it.
And going off of that, the last thing that we haven't really talked about with Spider-Man is the science aspect to it. So I thought that Andrew Garfield did a really great job with this. I didn't like that he kind of took Oscorp his web fluid, but I understood it. It was a way to work it in and a way to work in like that origin story. But Tom Holland nailed it with creating his own web fluid and being that science kid who just loves science for science sake. And
Yeah, the writers got it right on that one.
yeah. And then I had to give a 5 to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man simply because of the webs.
I think they kind of phoned it in like, oh, they'll never notice. We're giving them Spider-Man. Let's just do this.
Right?
There was one scene in there where he was in a science lab, maybe more, but the only one I remember is when he got bit and he went on a field trip.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I would love to see this. That's why I want to see him as Professor. Peter Parker's up there with Mr. Fantastic and the rest, the rest of the Illuminati and brains. He's one of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe, and it's never really portrayed that way in the movies.
Yeah.
100%.
Spider-Man trilogy, well, not even trilogy, but Spider-Man universe that would keep and get rid of all the other ones, which one would it be?
Not counting Spider-Verse?
Not counting Spider-Verse, only the live actions.
Spider-Man 2.
Okay. So the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans?
Oh, one franchise or one movie?
One franchise.
Oh, God.
One franchise.
I guess
I'd have to go
Tom
Tom
Holland,
Holland.
just because it includes so much other stuff. I guess
Yeah.
you have to go with Tom Holland. I don't want to lose Happy in my life.
I would too, and just because I think overall, like that entire cast is great.
It really is. I don't normally like movies with a bunch of teenagers or kids in it, like shows even they're like outside of Stranger Things. But man, there's something about this group of kids. It's just teenagers, very well acted, very well played. The chemistry is great.
And it was nice to see that Peter was actually being played by a teenager for once.
That's actually one of the first things I did is I went and I looked up how old is everybody actually, because that always bugs the crap out of me. But yes.
Yeah, you didn't have a 30-year-old playing a 17-year-old.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with the MCU one just because, look at all the doors it opened up, everything it encompasses. If you get rid of that, you get rid of a lot of the stuff we actually enjoy at Marvel. So,
For sure.
I want him to grow up, maybe over 6 films it will, when Tom Holland's, 25. Maybe we'll get that version. I agree with Gary full on. We need the science part of it. I would love to see him with some of the people, him and Black Cat's one. I'd love Black Cat with him, and I'd love to see that.
Oh, I need a Black Cat anything. I've been a fan of that character. That's one of the issues I need to get in my collection is her first appearance. That's something I got to get.
I completely agree with that. Black Cat is a phenomenal character, and everyone was comparing, that's just the DC version of Catwoman. That's just the Marvel version of Black Cat, and it's like they're not even the same.
And her history is so great with the Fox and everything, and where the Fox connected with her father. Just there's so much history with Felicia Hardy.
So if you think about who she's come across, especially in Spider-Man's universe, good way to introduce the X-Men because she fought with them, with Spider-Man. It's a good way to bring Daredevil back. Good way for Punisher to be introduced in the MCU because her and Spider-Man tangled with all 3 of them at various times. So it's a perfect way to get that in there, even like a Kingpin. So there's a lot of awesome ways to do it through other characters instead of just giving solo movies and stuff. I don't think Marvel's exploring that yet because I don't think they know what to do with all these characters they have. But I would love to see it. Probably a pipe dream at this point, but I would geek out over it hard.
Well, then we got to see if they're gonna pull that thread on the Prowler.
Yes.
Yep.
Which I feel like they
would
wouldn't
be
have had
very
Donald
interesting.
Glover in a movie to not use him down the road. So
Right, and the Prowler, he would be great in it.
yeah,
You know,
I
another
love Donald
street-level
Glover.
hero.
Absolutely phenomenal actor, phenomenal comedian. I would love to see him in another movie.
I feel like his appearance wasn't just a one-off.
No,
Yeah, you would
especially
hope
if you're going to name drop Aaron Davis.
Yeah.
You're going to end up having Miles. You're going to end up having Prowler. You're going to end up – there's so many other characters. And, I mean, even in Daredevil, they dropped the name Morales.
spin him off.
Exactly. So there you have it. We definitely can all agree that we want Tom Holland to stay as Spider-Man. We definitely love Tobey as Peter, except for Emo Peter. We all loved Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, but not so much as Peter. And that whole science-y stuff, I didn't really know what to name that portion, but it was definitely interesting, more interesting and amazing. And the MCU, where we got to really see Spider-Man take on this persona being a genius and not simply shooting webs just because he went like that. This whole thing right here, this coming, I'll never understand it. I don't get it. I don't know where that ever came from. I don't even want to. But truly, it was a breath of fresh air, to say the least, that Andrew Garfield then was that wisecracking Spider-Man again, and then Tom Holland really got into that and portrayed that persona of Peter and Spider-Man at the same time. And I feel like we had some really great conversation about that. From all of us here at the Comics Lounge, keep it casual.